The sound of a marriage dying isn't a bang, a whimper, or a slamming door. In my case, it was the distinct wet crunch of a piece of kale being chewed while I stood in the doorway of my own kitchen, holding a bouquet of supermarket tulips that suddenly felt like a handful of dead weeds. It was a Tuesday. Tuesdays were supposed to be taco nights, a tradition we started 5 years ago when we actually liked each other, but for the last 6 months, Tuesday had become the night Diane stared at her phone while I tried to figure out which version of my wife was currently inhabiting our house in the suburbs of Chicago. I had just asked a simple question. It wasn't an interrogation. It wasn't a demand. I simply asked, "Hey, do you want to grab some dinner later, or should I start cooking?" That was it. That was the crime. Diane didn't look up immediately. She finished scrolling through whatever infinite feed of discontent she was consuming, probably one of those toxic empowerment influencers she'd been obsessing over lately. Let's call her Coach Brenda, the secondary antagonist in the tragedy of my life. Brenda preached that men were emotional anchors and that a woman's highest calling was unapologetic space. Diane slowly lowered her phone, the screen still glowing against her cheek, and looked at me with eyes that didn't contain hate, which would have been manageable. Hate is a passion. Hate implies I matter. No, her eyes held something far worse, supreme, exhausted annoyance. It was the look you give a mosquito that keeps buzzing near your ear while you're trying to sleep. "Mark," she said, exhaling my name like it was a curse word she was trying to quit using. "Stop smothering me. I swear to God you are always there, always asking, always hovering. I'll reach out when I feel like talking." The room went absolute zero. I stood there, the plastic wrap around the tulips crinkling in the silence. My heart didn't break. It just sort of seized up like an engine running without oil. For years, I had been the pace car for her emotional instability. If she was sad, I was the clown. If she was angry, I was the punching bag. If she was anxious, I was the rock. I had curated my entire existence around anticipating her needs before she even knew she had them. And this was the payout, being told I was suffocating her because I offered to make tacos. Something inside my chest, a heavy iron gear that had been grinding for a decade, suddenly stopped turning. It wasn't sadness. It was clarity. A cold, sharp, terrifying clarity. Before I continue, if you are reading this and you feel that familiar pit in your stomach, that recognition of being an appliance in your own home rather than a partner, you might want to hit that follow button right now. The story gets darker and the revenge gets colder, and more than 95% of you listen without subscribing, which is frankly just bad strategy. You need to see how this ends. Back to the kitchen. I looked at her. She had already returned to her phone, dismissing me as if I were a waiter who had brought the wrong order. "I'll reach out when I feel like talking." The sentence hung in the air, vibrating. It was a command, a boundary, and a dismissal, all wrapped in one narcissistic package. She expected me to sigh, to apologize, to do that pathetic little shuffle backwards where I say, "Okay, honey, sorry, just let me know," and then retreat to the garage to tinker with tools I don't need to fix things that aren't broken. That was the script. We had performed this play 1,000 times. But today, the actor walked off stage. "Got it," I said. My voice was level. No sarcasm, no waver, just flat data delivery. She didn't even grunt. She took a sip of her sparkling water, convinced she had won another round of training. Mark. I turned around, placed the tulips on the counter, not in a vase, just lying there in their plastic shroud like a corpse, and walked out of the kitchen. I went upstairs to the guest bedroom, which had slowly become my office bunker over the last year. I sat down in my leather chair and pulled my phone out of my pocket. My hands weren't shaking. In fact, they felt steadier than they had in months. I opened her contact card. The photo was one of us from a vacation in Cabo 4 years ago, smiling, sunburnt, pretending we were happy. I hit edit. I scrolled down to the bottom. First, I toggled share my location to off. For 5 years, she had tracked my dot on the map, not because she cared about my safety, but because she wanted to know exactly how long she had until I got home, so she could adjust her mood accordingly. The dot vanished. Next, I went to emergency contacts. There she was, listed as wife or ICE. I hit the red minus sign, delete. It felt like cutting a physical cord. If I had a heart attack on the highway today, the hospital would call my brother in the state, not the woman sitting 30 feet below me eating kale. Then came the pièce de résistance. I went to our message thread. I tapped the info icon. Hide alerts. The little crescent moon symbol appeared next to her name. Muted, I wouldn't hear her. I wouldn't see her notification pop up on my lock screen. She was now just a ghost in the machine. I placed the phone face down on the desk. The silence in the room was heavy, but for the first time in forever, it wasn't oppressive. It was armor. I looked at the bookshelf and saw a small, dusty object, a ceramic figurine of a dog she had bought me on our first anniversary because she said I was loyal. I picked it up, feeling the cool weight of it. It felt heavy with irony. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and dropped it inside. It made a dull thud. That was the only sound I made for the rest of the night. I didn't slam doors. I didn't stomp around. I simply ceased to exist on her frequency. She wanted space. I was about to give her the vacuum of space. The first 24 hours were a masterclass in the art of disappearance while remaining in plain sight. I woke up at 5:00 a.m., an hour before my usual alarm. Normally, this was the time I would gently nudge Diane awake if she had an early meeting, or I would creep downstairs to grind the coffee beans, a specific Ethiopian blend she insisted on, which cost $20 a bag, so the aroma would be wafting up the stairs when she finally decided to grace the world with her consciousness. Not today. Today, the coffee grinder remained silent. The expensive beans stayed in their vacuum-sealed prison. I showered in the guest bathroom, used a towel that didn't smell like her lavender fabric softener, and dressed in a suit I hadn't worn in months. Sharp, professional. Armor. I walked past our bedroom door. It was slightly ajar. I could hear the white noise machine humming, masking the sound of her breathing. The urge to check on her, to peek in, to be the good husband, flared up in my chest for a microsecond. A phantom limb pain from an amputated relationship. I crushed it instantly. I walked down the stairs, the wood cool against my socks, and went straight to the kitchen. I made instant coffee, the cheap granular stuff I kept in the back of the pantry for emergencies. I drank it black, standing over the sink. It tasted like battery acid and freedom. I washed the mug, dried it, and put it away. No evidence. The kitchen looked exactly as it had the night before, minus the tulips which I had tossed into the trash bin in the garage on my way out. The counters were wiped down. The silence was absolute. I grabbed my keys and walked out the door without leaving a note, without sending a "have a good day" text, without preparing her lunch. For 2 days, Diane didn't even notice. That's how deep her narcissism ran. She interpreted my silence exactly as I knew she would. She thought I was sulking. She thought I was licking my wounds in the corner, waiting for her to snap her fingers so I could come running back, tail wagging, apologizing for being too much. She probably enjoyed the quiet. She probably told her friends or that idiot coach Brenda that she had finally set a boundary, and I was processing it. I went to work. I actually worked. I didn't spend half the day texting her, asking about her schedule, coordinating dinner, sending funny memes to try and elicit a dopamine hit of validation from her. I turned my phone face down on my desk and left it there. At 10:30 a.m., I saw the screen light up. No sound, just a silent flash. I didn't touch it. At 2:00 p.m., another flash. At 5:00 p.m., I finally checked. 2 messages. Message 1, 10:30 a.m. Hey. Message 2, 2:00 p.m. Did you take the coffee maker apart? I can't get it to work. I stared at the screen. The old Mark would have typed out a paragraph of instructions, or called her immediately to walk her through it, apologizing that the machine was finicky. The new Mark, the Mark who had been told to stop smothering, simply swiped the notification away. I didn't open the message. I didn't want the read receipt to trigger. I wanted her to stare at that delivered status until it burned a hole in her retina. I didn't go home right after work. Usually I rushed back to start dinner. Instead, I went to a diner 3 towns over. I sat in a booth, ate a burger that was terrible for my cholesterol, and read a book. I watched the clock, 7:00 p.m., 8:00 p.m., 9:00 p.m. When I finally pulled into the driveway, the house was dark except for the blue glow of the television in the living room. I entered through the garage, quiet as a shadow. I walked past the living room. Diane was on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the TV. She didn't look up, but I saw her posture stiffen. She was waiting for the confrontation. She was waiting for me to ask, "Why didn't you cook?" or "Did you miss me?" I walked past the doorway without breaking stride. "Good night," I said. Not a question, not an invitation, a dismissal. I went upstairs to the guest room, closed the door, and locked it. I could feel the confusion radiating from the floor below like heat rising. She wasn't angry yet. She was confused. The script had changed and she didn't have the new lines. The next morning, The escalation began. I woke up to find my phone had 3 missed calls from her, all from late last night after I had locked the door. She must have called from downstairs, too proud to walk up the steps. I checked the messages. You okay? This is childish, Mark. Are you seriously sleeping in the guest room? I deleted them. Didn't read. Didn't reply. I went to the kitchen. On the counter, she had left the expensive bag of coffee beans sitting prominently next to the grinder, a passive-aggressive totem demanding service. I looked at it. I reached into the cupboard, pulled out a box of tea, and made myself a cup of Earl Grey. I left the coffee beans exactly where they were. As I walked out the door, I saw her standing at the top of the stairs, messy hair, wearing my old oversized t-shirt. She looked small. Mark, she called out, her voice raspy. Is your phone broken? I stopped, hand on the doorknob. I didn't turn around. Nope. My voice cheerful, almost corporate. Works fine. Just giving you that space you wanted. Have a great day. I shut the door before she could respond. The sound of the latch clicking into place was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. It sounded like the lock on a prison cell. But for the first time, I realized I wasn't the one inside. She was. The silence I had constructed was not empty. It was heavy, filled with the static of her growing anxiety. By the third day, the dynamic had shifted from confusion to a low-grade panic. Diane was a creature of feedback loops. She put out a signal. Distress, anger, neediness, and the world, mostly me, was supposed to respond. When the feedback loop was severed, she started to short circuit. I sat at my desk at work, staring at a spreadsheet that I was actually getting paid to manage, unlike the emotional ledger of my marriage, which had been in the red for a decade. My phone, still face down, vibrated against the mahogany veneer. It was a distinctive buzz, 3 short pulses, a text, then another, then a long vibration, a call. I didn't flip it over. I had headphones on, playing classical music, drowning out the digital noise of her desperation. Around noon, I finally checked. The notification center was a graveyard of unacknowledged attempts. 11:15 a.m. Pick up. 11:17 a.m. Mark, stop it. 11:30 a.m. Voice message. Bureau 14. 11:45 a.m. Image attachment. I was curious about the image. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but I'm a strategist, not a robot. I previewed it without opening the chat. It was a meme, a picture of a grumpy cat with the caption, "Me waiting for my husband to stop being a drama queen." Normally, the old Mark would have seen this as an olive branch. I would have chuckled, sent back a laughing emoji, and the tension would have dissolved, restoring the status quo where she gets to be abusive and I get to be grateful she's joking about it. But new Mark looked at that cat and felt nothing but cold contempt. It was a test. She was poking the animal through the cage bars to see if it would bite or cower. I did neither. I stayed in the back of the cage, invisible in the shadows. I cleared the notification. Then came the flying monkeys. At 1 p.m., my office phone rang. Not my cell, my desk landline. Nobody called that line except spammers and HR. I picked it up. This is Mark. Mark, it's your mother. My stomach tightened. Diane had escalated to the matriarchy. My mother, a woman who believed marriage was an endurance sport where you won by dying last, sounded tense. Mark, Diane called me. She sounds worried. She says she can't get a hold of you. Is everything all right? I leaned back in my chair, spinning a pen between my fingers. This was the moment. If I cracked, if I vented, if I told my mom she's a narcissist and I'm done, my mother would panic. She would try to fix it. She would become a mediator. And mediation was just another form of negotiation I didn't want to participate in. I'm fine, Mom, I said, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm. I'm just incredibly focused on work right now. Big project, quarter-end analysis, you know how it gets. But she said you're not sleeping in the bedroom? Mom, I said, lowering my voice to a confidential whisper. I'm working late hours. I don't want to disturb her sleep. Honestly, I'm doing exactly what she asked. She wanted space. I'm being a respectful husband. There was a pause on the line. My mother is not a stupid woman. She raised 3 boys. She knows the difference between consideration and combat. Mark, she said, her tone shifting from inquisitive to protective. She said you removed her as your emergency contact. She saw it on the shared insurance app. I didn't flinch. I updated my paperwork, Mom. If something happens to me, I want you to be the first to know. You're the one who actually answers the phone.
I'll tell her you're just busy. Eat something green, Mark. Love you. Love you too, Mom. She hung up. I knew exactly what she would tell Diane. She would say, "He's fine, dear. Just busy. Stop worrying." She would normalize my behavior, gaslighting Diane by accident, or maybe on purpose. My mother never really liked Diane's kale salads anyway. I checked my personal phone again. The count was rising, 7 unread texts. The garage door opener app sent a notification. Garage door open, 2:15 p.m. She was home early. Garage door closed, 2:20 p.m. She left. She was hunting. I opened the app and disabled push notifications for guest users. I didn't want to know when she came and went. I didn't want to track her. But more importantly, I went into the admin settings and revoked her admin privileges on the smart home hub. She could still open the door, but she couldn't see the history log anymore. She couldn't see my history log. She wouldn't know I had left for lunch at 12:30 and returned at 1:15. She wouldn't know if I was home or not until she physically walked into the room. I was turning the house into a black box. By 5 o'clock p.m., the text had shifted tone again. "I called your mom. She said you're fine. What is going on? Are you cheating on me? Is that it? Mark, answer me right now or I'm coming to your office." That last one was a bluff. Diane hated my office. It was too far, the traffic was bad, and she felt insecure around my female colleagues who actually had careers. I bet on her laziness. I bet on her bluff. I didn't reply. I left work, went to the gym, a place I hadn't been in 6 months because Diane complained it took time away from us, and worked out until my muscles screamed. I checked my phone in the locker room. No new texts for 2 hours. She was stewing. She was probably sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her phone, waiting for the 3 dancing dots that indicate Mark is typing. Those dots would never appear. I wasn't typing. I was erasing. The realization that this wasn't just a mood swing, but a structural dismantling of our life hit Diane on day 4. Until then, she had been dealing with the silence on an emotional level. Annoying, hurtful, confusing. But day 4 was payday. Or rather, it was the day the administrative machinery of our marriage usually hummed along in the background, lubricated by my unpaid labor. I sat in my car in the parking lot of a hardware store during my lunch break. I wasn't buying hardware. I was buying privacy. I had my laptop open, tethered to my phone's hotspot. Not the family Wi-Fi. Never again the family Wi-Fi. I logged into our shared cloud account. We had 2 terabytes of storage, photos, documents, tax returns, the digital detritus of a decade. I created a new account. Mark Solo, I began the migration. It wasn't a copy-paste job. It was a partition. I moved my financial records, my work documents, the photos of my family, and my personal projects into the new vault. Then I looked at the shared folder. This was the nerve center. This was where she auto-uploaded her thousands of selfies, her screenshots of inspirational quotes, and her backups. I didn't delete her data. That would be petty and legally messy. Instead, I removed my credit card from the recurring billing. I switched the payment method to ask for new card. Then I removed my account from the family sharing plan. The effect wouldn't be immediate, but it would be annoying. In about 24 hours, her phone would start screaming that her backup failed. She would get pop-ups saying storage full. She would try to buy more, but the card on file, my card, would be gone. She would have to enter her own. It was a small friction, a grain of sand in the shoe, but these things accumulate. Next came the streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, HBO. I changed the passwords, all of them. I didn't cancel the accounts. I just logged out all devices and changed the key. When she sat down tonight to watch her Real Housewives marathon to soothe her anxiety, she would be greeted by a login screen. She wouldn't know the password because I was the one who set them all up. I was the IT department. I could imagine the scene. She would grab the remote, click the app, and see incorrect password. She would huff, grab her phone to text me, and then remember, I don't answer. She would have to reset it. But the reset email, it went to my personal Gmail, not the joint one. I watched the email notification pop up on my screen, Netflix password reset request. I deleted the email, another one, Spotify password reset request. Deleted. I wasn't preventing her from watching TV. She could create her own accounts. She had a job, she had a credit card, she could pay for her own distraction, but she wouldn't see it that way. She would see it as me locking the doors of the house one by one.
The real blow, however, was the toll tag, the Easy Pass. Diane had a work meeting every Thursday at a Marriott downtown. She claimed it was a networking mixer for local entrepreneurs. I had my suspicions for years. The hotel, the timing, the fact that she always came home freshly showered and smelling of hotel soap, not stale conference room coffee, but I never had proof, and paranoid was her favorite label for me. I logged into the transponder account. I reported the tag in her car as lost stolen and deactivated it. That evening, I was in the guest room reading a book on contract law, light reading for the uninitiated. My phone was on the desk, face up this time. I wanted to see this. 6:45 p.m., a flurry of texts. My Easy Pass didn't work. I'm stuck at the toll booth. There's a line behind me. I don't have cash. Mark. Why is it saying invalid tag? Mark, answer me. I turned the page of my book. I imagined the red lights flashing at the toll booth, the gate refusing to rise, the angry honking of commuters behind her, the flustered conversation with the attendant. It was a humiliation. And the best part, she was heading to the Marriott. If she was going to cheat on me or network or whatever she did in room 304, she was going to have to pay the toll in cash and explain why her husband had cut off her access. I didn't feel glee. I didn't feel a rush of adrenaline. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a mechanic tightening a bolt. I was removing the friction that had allowed her to glide through life while I paved the road. Now she was driving on gravel. She came home 3 hours later. I heard the garage door open. I heard her heavy footsteps on the stairs. She pounded on the guest room door. Mark, open this door. My card got declined at the toll. The Netflix is down. What are you doing? I sat in the chair, silent. I picked up a pair of noise-canceling headphones, Bose, excellent quality, and placed them over my ears. I turned on a podcast about the fall of the Roman Empire. I watched the doorknob jiggle. It rattled violently, then a kick, then silence. She didn't have the key to this room. I had changed the lock 2 days ago. It was a simple task, took 10 minutes with a screwdriver. She never noticed because she never came in here. To her, this room was storage. To me, it was the only sovereign territory I had left. The text count stood at 42. Isolation is a powerful weapon, but social embarrassment is a nuclear one. Diane thrived on her public image. She was the put-together one, the woman who had it all, the house, the career, the devoted husband. My silence was beginning to create cracks in that porcelain facade, and people were starting to peer through the gaps. I walked into my office building on Friday morning. The receptionist, Sarah, a sharp woman in her 50s who had seen me work late nights for 7 years while Diane was out with friends, looked at me over her glasses. "Morning, Mark," she said, but her tone was different, hesitant. "Your wife called the main line 3 times yesterday after you left. She was spirited." "Spirited?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "She demanded I put her through to your direct line. I told her you were in a meeting. She said, 'I know he's not in a meeting. Tell him to pick up the damn phone.'" Sarah paused, gauging my reaction. "I told her that per company policy, we don't transfer personal calls during core hours unless it's an emergency." She hung up. I smiled, a genuine warm smile. "Thank you, Sarah. You're a lifesaver. Honestly, we're going through a bit of a restructuring at home. She's having trouble adjusting to the new boundaries. If she calls again, just send her to voicemail." Sarah nodded, a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Restructuring. I like that word. I'll handle it. Oh, and Mark, you look rested." "I am, Sarah. I really am." I walked to my desk. On it sat a bottle of Lagavulin 16-year scotch. I had bought it for myself during lunch yesterday. Diane hated whiskey. She said it smelled like old men and bad decisions. She wouldn't let me keep it in the house. Now it sat on my desk, a amber totem of my autonomy. I wasn't drinking it at work, obviously, but just having it there, visible, was a declaration. Around 11 a.m., my phone buzzed, not a text, a notification from LinkedIn. "Diane has viewed your profile. Diane has viewed your profile. Diane has viewed your profile." She was checking to see if I had changed my job status. She was checking to see if I had blocked her there too. I hadn't. I wanted her to see. I posted an update. "Excited to be leading the new Q4 initiative. Focus and clarity are key. Leadership, focus, growth." It was vague corporate speak, but to her, it was a coded message. I was focusing, I was growing, and she wasn't part of the initiative. Then came the text from Tom, her brother. Tom was a decent guy, but he was terrified of his sister. "Tom, hey man, everything good? Di is freaking out. Said you're having a midlife crisis or something. She said you locked her out of the Netflix. I stared at the message. I liked Tom. I didn't want to burn him, but he was collateral damage. Me, hey Tom? No crisis, just stop managing everything for her. She wanted space, remember? Stop smothering me. I'm just letting her handle her own subscriptions. She's a grown woman. She can reset a password. Tom. Wait, she said that? Oof, yeah, I get it. She can be a lot. Good luck, man. I'll tell her you're alive. I knew exactly what that meant. The narrative was shifting. She was trying to paint me as the villain, the unstable husband having a breakdown. But the facts were too mundane. I wasn't buying a sports car. I wasn't sleeping with a 20-year-old. I was just not resetting her Netflix password. It made her complaints sound petty. It made her look incompetent. That evening, I stopped at the grocery store. I ran into Brenda, the life coach, the antagonist. She was in the organic produce aisle, squeezing avocados like she was searching for their chakras. Mark, she said, her voice dripping with faux concern. She didn't ask how I was. She scanned me for weakness. Diane is really worried about you. She says you've shut down. You know, stonewalling is a form of emotional abuse. I looked at Brenda. I looked at the avocado in her hand. Brenda, I said, my voice smooth as silk. Diane told me specifically, stop smothering me. I'll reach out when I feel like talking. I'm just respecting her agency. Isn't that what you teach? Empowering women to set boundaries? I'm honoring her boundary. Why are you trying to make me violate her consent? Brenda's mouth opened, then closed. I had used her own buzzwords against her. Well, yes, but I'm glad we agree, I said. It's so important to listen to women, isn't it? Have a good night. I walked away, leaving her standing there with her avocado. I knew she would call Diane immediately. I knew she would say, he's twisted everything. But the seed was planted. I was complying. Maliciously. Perfectly complying. When I got home, the house was dark. Diane wasn't there. The GPS tracker I had removed from her car was sitting on the kitchen counter. She had found it. Or rather, she had realized I wasn't tracking her and ripped the dashboard apart looking for it, only to find nothing, so she put the idea of it there. Wait, no, I looked closer. It wasn't the GPS tracker, it was her wedding ring, sitting on the granite island. A threat. A dare. Talk to me, or this marriage is over. I picked up the ring. It was platinum, with a diamond I had spent 3 years saving for. I looked at it. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my own ring, and set it down next to hers. 2 circles of metal. I didn't panic. I didn't call her. I went to the fridge, took out a beer, and went upstairs to the guest room. If she wanted to bet the marriage on a game of chicken, she was going to learn that I had already cut the brake lines. The ring on the counter was a bluff. I knew it. She knew it. But in the game of poker we were playing, she had just shoved her stack all in on a pair of 2s, assuming I would fold, because I always folded. When she came home at 2:00 a.m., drunk, stumbling, loud, and saw my ring sitting next to hers, the bluff collapsed. She didn't storm upstairs. She didn't scream. I heard a sound that was rare for Diane. A sob, not a manipulative stage-crying sob, but a sharp intake of breath followed by the shattering of glass. She had swept the rings onto the floor. The next morning, the rings were gone. She had picked them up. Both of them. Mine wasn't on the counter. It wasn't in the trash. She had taken it. She was holding it hostage, or maybe she was wearing it on a chain, clutching it like a talisman of the control she had lost. Day 10 brought the desperation phase. The silence was no longer a void. It was a mirror, and she couldn't stand what she saw in it. I was at a job site, a new construction project about 40 minutes from the office. I was wearing a hard hat and a high-vis vest, reviewing blueprints with the foreman. My phone, tucked into my inner pocket, began to vibrate. It didn't stop. It wasn't distinct text anymore. It was a continuous stream of data. I stepped away near a stack of drywall and checked. 34 messages in the last hour. I miss you. This isn't funny anymore. Are you punishing me? I'm sorry about what I said. Okay? I'm sorry. Please, we need to talk. I feel like I'm going crazy. Mark? 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 Then the email started. My work email. She knew I checked that. Subject. Please, body. I don't know what you're doing, but you're scaring me. I'm sorry I said you were smothering me. I was just stressed. Please come home early. I'll make tacos. Tacos, the audacity of it. She thought she could reset the timeline to that Tuesday night with a single meal. She thought tacos were the currency of my dignity. I didn't reply, but the escalation wasn't over. At 2:30 p.m., the foreman tapped me on the shoulder. "Hey, Mark, there's a lady at the main gate, says she's your wife. Security won't let her in because she doesn't have PPE. My blood ran cold, then hot. She had tracked me. How? I had disabled location sharing. I had removed the GPS. Then I realized the iPad, the old iPad we kept in the kitchen for recipes. It was logged into my Apple ID. It was old. I forgot about it. It had Find My enabled. She had used the kitchen tablet to hunt me down. "Tell security to tell her I'm on the roof and can't come down," I said, "and tell them if she causes a scene to call the cops. Liability issues." The foreman looked at me, confused. "Your wife, boss? Ex-wife pending," I muttered. "Just do it." I watched from the second floor window of the unfinished skeleton of the building. I saw her car, her white SUV, at the chain-link fence. I saw her arguing with the security guard. I saw her waving her phone. She looked frantic. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her gestures jagged. She wasn't the composed, superior woman who sipped sparkling water while crushing my soul. She was a chaotic element. She was banging on the invisible walls I had erected. The guard pointed to the sign, "Restricted Access." She kicked the tire of her own car. She screamed something that the wind carried away. Then she got back in and peeled out, gravel spraying behind her. I pulled out my phone. I opened my Apple ID settings. I saw the device list. Kitchen iPad. Remove from account. Erase device. I nuked it. By the time she got home, that iPad would be a factory reset brick. She had played her ace, finding me, and I had just burned the map. I drove back to the office, not home. I stayed late. I slept on the leather couch in my office. It was uncomfortable, smelling of cleaning fluid and cheap coffee, but it was safer than the house. That night, she sent a voice message. I didn't listen to it, but the transcription preview on my screen read, "I went to the site. They wouldn't let me in. You were there. I know you were there. Why are you doing this to me? I love you. I love you." The emergency brake. The phrase she used only when she needed something or when she was backed into a corner. It felt like a lie. It felt like a weapon. I lay in the dark of my office staring at the blinking red light of the smoke detector, one blink every minute. Steady, consistent, unwavering, just like me. When private manipulation fails, the narcissist turns to public theater. Diane realized she couldn't reach me through the phone or the front gate, so she decided to reach me through the audience. She needed witnesses. She needed to be the victim in a tragedy everyone was watching. On day 12, my phone buzzed with a notification from Facebook. I rarely used Facebook. It was a graveyard of high school acquaintances and political rants, but I kept the app for family updates. Diane had tagged me in a photo. It was a picture from 2 years ago. We were at a vineyard, the sun setting behind us. I was looking at her with adoration. She was looking at the camera, checking her angle. The caption read, "Marriage is hard. Sometimes we lose our way. Sometimes we say things we don't mean. I messed up. I took the best man I know for granted. I'm working on me. I love you, Mark. Please come home." It was a masterstroke of PR. Humble, vulnerable, complimentary. It garnered instant validation. "Stay strong, babe. He'll come around. You guys are perfect. Love conquers all. Men can be so stubborn. Hang in there." She was crowdsourcing her forgiveness. She was forcing me into a position where, if I didn't respond, I looked like a cold-hearted monster punishing a repentant wife. If I did respond, I was back in the trap. I sat at my desk reading the comments. My finger hovered over the untag button, but I didn't press it. Untagging showed I cared. Untagging was in reaction. Instead, I let it sit. I let the comments pile up. And then I let the silence speak. Because while her friends were supportive, my friends, the few I had left after she isolated me, stayed silent. My brother didn't like it. My mother didn't comment. The silence from my camp was deafening. It created a visual disparity in the comment section. Her echo chamber versus the void. That night, the text messages changed. The public performance had given her a temporary dopamine hit, but the lack of private response was causing the ego death. 11:45 p.m. I posted about us. Did you see it? 12:10 a.m. Everyone is asking why you haven't liked it. 12:30 a.m. You're embarrassing me. 1 a.m. Can you please just tell me what is happening? Just one word. Mark. Please. The breakdown was accelerating. She was cycling through every emotional tactic she knew. Guilt. I'm crying on the bathroom floor. Anger. You're a sociopath. Bargaining. I'll go to therapy. We can go to that counselor you wanted. Gaslighting. You're making this up in your head. I never meant it like that. 87 messages. That was the count by morning. She had sent 87 messages into the abyss. I scrolled through them, not reading the content, just the timestamps. The gaps between them were getting shorter. She wasn't sleeping, she was spiraling. I was sleeping fine. In fact, I had rented a small Airbnb for the week, a studio apartment near my office. I hadn't told her, I hadn't told anyone. I needed to physically remove myself from the house to let the pressure cooker explode without me inside it. I woke up, made coffee in a French press, my own, and checked my email. A notification from the bank. Joint account, withdrawal of $500. Joint account, withdrawal of $500. Joint account, withdrawal of $500. She was draining the cash, trying to get my attention, trying to force me to call and ask, "What are you doing?" I logged into the banking app. I transferred my direct deposit to a new account at a different bank I had opened 3 days ago. The joint account had about $4,000 in it. I let her take it. It was the severance package. I didn't freeze the account. I didn't call the fraud department. I let her rate it because every dollar she took was evidence. Every withdrawal was proof of her instability. I sent one email that day, not to her, to the HR department at my company. To HR from Mark, subject, change of address / direct deposit update. Please update my file effective immediately. I was erasing the trails. At 2 p.m. she texted again. I took money. Did you notice? Do you even care? She was shouting at a wall, and the wall wasn't even echoing. She had lost the ability to affect me, and that, for a narcissist, is a fate worse than death. She wasn't fighting me anymore. She was fighting the ghost of the man she thought she owned. 2 weeks. 14 days of radio silence. To Diane, it must have felt like 14 years. The human brain is wired for connection. When you sever it abruptly, the mind invents monsters to fill the gap. She had imagined affairs, secret families, terminal illnesses. But she couldn't imagine the truth. I was just done. I was walking to my car in the office parking lot. It was 5:15 p.m. The sun was glaring off the asphalt. I was chatting with Dave, a guy from accounting, about the upcoming football season. I felt light. The Airbnb was quiet. My new routine was solid. Then I heard the screech of tires. Diane's white SUV jumped the curb at the entrance of the lot. She didn't park. She abandoned the vehicle in the fire lane, door wide open. She spotted me instantly. "Mark!" The scream tore through the parking lot. People stopped. Dave looked at me, eyes wide. "Is that?" "Yeah," I said, adjusting my laptop bag. "Go inside, Dave." "But, go." Diane was running toward me. She looked like a wreck. She was wearing sweatpants and a blouse that was buttoned wrong. Her makeup was yesterday's. She stopped about 10 feet away, heaving. You. She couldn't find the words. She was vibrating with adrenaline and exhaustion. "I sent you 87 messages," she screamed, her voice cracking. "I thought you were dead. I called the hospitals. I called the police. They said you were an adult and allowed to be missing. How could you do this?" A crowd was gathering, smokers by the back door, people walking to their cars. This was the audience she wanted, but the script had flipped. She wasn't the victim. She was the crazy woman in the parking lot. I stood perfectly still. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't step toward her. I didn't step back. I held my ground, clutching the handle of my bag, my symbol of work, of stability. "Diane," I said. My voice was calm, projecting just enough to be heard by her and the silent observers. "You're causing a scene." "A scene?" she shrieked, laughing hysterically. "You haven't spoken to me in 2 weeks. You moved out. You cut off the money. You're torturing me. Why? What did I do?" She truly didn't know. That was the tragedy of it. She had rewritten history so many times she couldn't remember the opening chapter. I looked her in the eye. The coldness in my chest was absolute. "You told me to stop smothering you," I said. She froze. "You said," and I quote, "I'll reach out when I feel like talking." I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear the steel in it. "So I waited. I stopped smothering you. I gave you the space you demanded. I didn't text. I didn't call. I didn't track you. I let you be free. She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. But I didn't mean you meant it, I said. You just didn't mean for me to agree with you. Mark, please, she whispered, her anger collapsing into fear. She reached out to grab my arm. I stepped back. Don't, I said. I pulled my keys out of my pocket. I'm not coming home, Diane. The lease on the house is in both our names, but I've already spoken to the landlord. I'm off the renewal. You have the space, all of it. No, she sobbed. No, you can't just. I already did. I walked around her toward my car. She stood there, trembling, surrounded by the wreckage of her own demands. She had wanted to be the main character. Now she was the villain in her own public humiliation. I got in my car. I locked the doors. As I drove past her, she was still standing in the middle of the lane, looking at her hands, as if wondering how she had let everything slip through them. The parking lot confrontation was the emotional climax, but the legal and psychological coup de grace came 3 hours later. I knew she would go home. I knew she would try to spin the story to her friends, to Tom, to anyone who would listen. She would say I was having a breakdown, that I was cruel, that I snapped over nothing. I needed to nail the narrative to the floor. I had prepared an envelope, a simple manila envelope. I had hired a courier service, not the mail, a private courier, to deliver it to the house at 7 p.m. I was sitting in my Airbnb eating takeout Thai food when my phone notified me. Package delivered. Diane would be at the kitchen table, probably with Brenda, who would have rushed over to support her and drink my wine, trying to reconstruct her reality. The doorbell would ring. She would open it, hoping it was me. Instead, a stranger would hand her the envelope. Inside, there was no letter, no long-winded explanation of my feelings. No, dear Diane. There was a single sheet of paper. On it, I had printed a screenshot. It was from her phone. Wait, how did I have a screenshot from her phone? Because 2 months ago, when she was sleeping, I had synced her phone to my laptop to back up photos she was worried about losing. I had a full backup, and in that backup, I had found the thread with Brenda. The screenshot was dated 2 days before the Stop Smothering Me incident. Brenda, he's just so needy. It's pathetic. Diane, I know. It's like living with a golden retriever. I need to break him. I need to make him scared to lose me so he stops asking so many questions. I'm going to do the freeze out. Watch him panic. Brenda, yes, Queen, train him. Below the screenshot, I had written one line in black ink. Consider me trained. That was it. I didn't include divorce papers. Those were coming via certified mail next week. I didn't include threats. I just included the proof that I knew. I knew it wasn't a moment of stress. I knew it wasn't an accident. I knew it was a strategy. And by showing her that I knew her strategy, I dismantled it. I imagined the scene. Diane reading the text, the blood draining from her face. Brenda sitting across from her, realizing her texts were on that paper too. The realization that I hadn't been sulking. I had been observing. I wasn't the victim of her freeze out. I was the observer of her failed experiment. My phone buzzed. Diane, then Brenda, then Diane again. I didn't block them. I just let them ring. The symbol for this part wasn't the envelope. It was the silence button on the side of my iPhone. I toggled it on and off just to feel the click, click, on, click, off, control. She wanted to break me. She wanted to train me. She succeeded. She trained me to live without her. 6 weeks later, the legal machinery was grinding along. The no-fault divorce was in progress. We had a mediator. I hadn't seen Diane face-to-face since the parking lot. All communication went through lawyers. It was expensive, but peace is a luxury item worth paying for. I was living in a new apartment downtown. Small, modern, clean, no decorative pillows I wasn't allowed to touch, no kale. It was a Friday evening. I was walking out of my building to meet some friends, new friends, and some old ones who had drifted back once the Diane filter was removed from my life. We were going to a jazz bar. I was wearing a new jacket. I felt lighter, not just physically. I had lost the stress weight, but existentially. I saw her. She was sitting on a bench across the street. She wasn't making a scene this time. She was dressed normally, but she looked tired, smaller. She was watching the entrance of my building. She saw me come out. I stopped. She stood up. She took a half step forward, then stopped. She waited for me to signal. A wave, a nod, a middle finger, anything. She was looking for engagement. She was starving for it. I looked at her. I saw the woman I had spent 10 years trying to please. I saw the manipulation, the insecurity, the calculated cruelty that she masked as boundaries. But I also saw a stranger. I didn't feel anger. The rage had burned off weeks ago, leaving only ash. I didn't feel love. I didn't even feel pity. I felt nothing. I turned to my friend, laughed at something he said, and we began to walk down the sidewalk. "Mark," she called out. It was weak, a question, not a demand. I didn't turn my head. I didn't break stride. I kept walking. I walked past her, past the history, past the 87 messages, past the smothering. I reached into my pocket and touched the key to my new apartment. It was cold, sharp metal, the symbol of the finale, the key to a door she would never open. I turned the corner and she disappeared from my view, and then from my mind. She had said she would reach out when she felt like talking. I just never promised I'd be there to listen.